Today I'm joined by Dr. Queenita Fernandes, physician executive and purpose-driven transformation leader. Her story begins in India, where her father challenged cultural expectations and taught her possibility. That belief anchors a career built on courage, evidence, empathy, and service. We explore reframing failure, leading with data and purpose, and building teams rooted in trust and humanity. Let's dive in. Hi, Queenita. Welcome to Moments with Molly. It is so lovely to talk to you today.
Hey Molly, the pleasure is all mine, and thanks for having this. Is such a wonderful idea and such a wonderful thing that you're doing, getting the voices out there. Very grateful and honored that you reached out to me, and I'm really excited for today's session.
Well, I think we'll get straight into it. So you have spent 20 years leading in medtech and pharma, but you grew up in India and as one of four sisters. What was that experience like for you?
Well, growing up in a household of four sisters, just imagine that. We were all each other's throat. We wanted each other's clothes and so on. But what was great about growing in a family as broad-minded as mine were my parents, my dad, especially my dad. It's no secret when it comes to Indian culture how gender holds an important place in everyone's mind, right? And so my household wasn't different. My immediate relations, all expected a son from my mom and dad, and they were under pressure. But what ultimately they did get were four daughters. And so my dad decided that that's not how it's going to be. He's going to change his daughters into sons in the way the world sees it, and prove to the world daughters are no less than sons. And so I grew up in a household that was not limited by gender. It was more for me the possibilities, the potentials that my parents opened up. We were not told to be clothed and indoors. We were told you can be out in your shorts. You can think and speak up your mind. You can partake in discussions and so on, and even talents. We were not limited by if we wanted to pick up music, we could. If you wanted to be an engineer, we could. It was really not limited, and so I feel I grew up in a house that empowered me, and that was all because of my parents.
And how did that early experience change the way that you saw opportunity?
Right? As children, as we grow up, Molly, we are in our own bubble. And I have two kids. I have a 19-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I see them in their bubble, like no cares for the world, very innocent. And I wish I could be there. But there's always this instance in life that happens, and you're like, that changes your whole world. And for some people, they say, oh, you matured. But to me, it was eye-opening, a revelation. It was something like, oops, I did not know I'm this. So let me tell you a little bit of his story, right? I'm a seventh grader. I am up there, just enjoying life, nothing for cares. Like, I did not think about, oh, I want to be this, I want to do that. And just, a regular average kid there out in the block. But this one day I happened to hear in a conversation that the elders were having. I just happened to step in from school, and I heard kind of a heated conversation, and I can't recollect exactly what was the conversation about. But the one thing that I heard my dad say, and that really took me aback, and he said exactly that I will show you my daughters are no less than sons, and I will show you that they will be educated till they graduate, till what they want. They are not. I'm not going to stop their education, and I'll prove to you that again. I was taken aback as to why my dad has to prove anything. And that started the curiosity in me. And I'm like, okay, now I want to know what the world thinks about us. And now I want to know, why is my dad being a bit stubborn about this, when I didn't understand why one has to be stubborn for equality. Like, I'm not different from a man or a boy. And then I went down that lane, and I'm like, all right, this is that aspect, that thing in me that started. I'm going to really take the path that my dad has set for me and prove him right. That ignited a passion, and that started off my career in the best way I could, in terms of talents, in terms of what I could absorb, in terms of what I can give back. And the more I went into it, the more I realized the path became clearer and clearer.
So did it come as well from a passion for medical devices and pharma, or did you have to play around a little bit with different avenues that you could still prove him right?
Right. Well, that's a good question. Again, I want to go back to the culture you said in Asia. I just don't want to say it's India, but I soon realized it's all over Asia. You are either to be a successful or either to be the apple of your eye, right? Your parents say, you're my apple of my eye. But to get there, what do the parents expect? They are still bound with that. And this is like going, I don't know, 4 decades ago. Like the thinking is you are successful when you are either an engineer or a medical person or a chartered accountant. So my elder sister was so smart in math, everybody thought she'd be a chartered accountant. And she kind of went that route. She did go that route. Um, and I was like, oh gosh, and I have to choose between. I didn't want to be a chartered accountant, and that was for clear. But I did know that my it kind of went in, and there was no kind of face kind of an open creative mind to say, oh, what else can you do better? It was just academics. You either decide you like science or you decide you like engineering. And that's how even the schools train you. There isn't a separate art and language or creative till you are up in college and get exposed to it by, I think, by sheer luck when you get exposed to something different from science and engineering at that time. All I knew was science or engineering. So as I stepped into college and I had to take that decision, I just went by, okay, what are my strengths? What are the subjects I really like and I can really achieve the goals that I want? But there was again this one moment that really strengthened because most of my school friends were taking engineering and they're like, well, in 4 years you get there, you start making the money. And I stepped back and said, is it the money? Is it the name? Is it the fame? What do I really need? And again went back in being curious, in asking questions, reflecting not only just on what makes me good but also why. And that is the time, about maybe in just as I was entering college, my sister, she came down with asthma. She was diagnosed, and at that time in the 90s, very different from the United States here, the medications or the knowledge of medicines or the knowledge of asthma, the awareness of asthma wasn't there. And my sister, my mom, suddenly became this, my mom became this impatient. And I have never seen her like, she had the whole, she could do anything for her daughter, went from one medic to the other doctor to another physician, didn't know. And she was really panicking when one of her daughters is undergoing these symptoms. And I could understand that because right. And I roomed with my sister and I would get up with her in the night. I could see her wheezing, panting, breathless, and she could just do nothing. And later down the line, she put on a lot of weight. She was on steroids and many other things. At that time, when I looked at that and I'm like, what can I give back? I couldn't help. I felt helpless. And I'm like, if only I had the knowledge, if I had the right medicines, if I knew what could make her better. And then I went down and looking at all my cousins who passed away due to tuberculosis very early in life at the age of just in their teens, at the age of 13 or at the age of 20. I lost my cousins to tuberculosis, but I was young at the time and I just missed them so much but didn't know why. Soon enough I started having the discussions in the house, and I realized like there is a need of a medical professional more than an engineer. Perhaps the engineer can get in the finances early on, but I felt suddenly that passion come in me. Suddenly I felt that which wasn't existing, and that is when I decided. It was again, I know this is a long story, but it was not what I initially thought what I'm good at, can I get the goals, but what drove me is the passion that suddenly ignited in me. And I think that turned into a purpose. And when you get that purpose in life, no matter what the challenges are, you will persevere, you will be resilient. And so that was, I feel, the real thing that really made me pursue medicine, to really get to understand in a third world country why we are not aware early on, why these medications and drugs are not available, why these devices are not there early on. It's a different story today, right? Things released here are released or manufactured that day, but back then there was really that why, there was really that purpose required.
I think that's a really good point as well about, well, relating to anyone starting off at their career or even changing career choices of what you should be driven by, because so many people will maybe veer away from the purpose element and will drive towards the success or almost like the ego side of it of having the like fancy title or the finance like successes that come with that. So that's a really great way for you to be driven actually by that passion. And I know that you also said that you were driven by that wanting to prove that your dad was right, that your almost daughters could be like sons. So, do you think that women today are still driven by that need to kind of prove themselves?
Yeah, I think so. I really do think so. It's much less visible, I would say, because there's a lot of awareness. Uh, but I do think women need to have their voice. Women need to stand up for each other. Women need to live by example and really uplift. There are two words in my vocabulary: empowering and uplifting. And they have to go hand in hand. I can't come here and say, I empower you to do things and then just take the back seat. But how and what are the ways, the means that I can uplift you, right? And it's. Let me give you this example. I came to the United States and I did not kind of throw my title out there. Hey, I'm an MD, give me this position. But I kind of started off with, I want to understand the device industry. I came from the pharma side of about a decade in working with pharma. And now I am in the device industry in 2011. And I'm like, I need to know more about this. Um, and basically in that sense, I was like, less women engineers, less women medics surrounded. And I'm like, okay, what's happening here? Right. And then there comes this one liners like, well, you didn't tell me, so I didn't know. And I was like, but wouldn't that be implied? So again, there comes the cultural clashes, right? And understanding the background from where people come from where women come from. Like back home in India, women came from, my hard work will be reflective of you giving me the next step, right? But I'm not going to ask you. I'm not going to say, hey, listen, I want to get to that seat, so I'm doing all of this thing. Nope, I will keep doing it till you realize that that I deserve it. The word deserve is like drilled in our heads. You need to earn the right. You need to earn that next. But what I learned out here is that that's not the case. If you do not speak and say, I want that and that's my goal, no one will know. You can keep working. Everyone will just, and then at the end of the day, you'll end up feeling taken advantage of. So my things, my take on this to the women are, yes, understand cultural, where cultures come from. If you are from here, understand the background and the culture of a hardworking woman. Connect with them, connect to understand them, and have them speak in their own language, right? Like out here, I can say hi to the CEO when I'm walking, but out in Japan, you cannot. You have to bow, you cannot speak. You have to let your seniors speak. That's the culture. And I didn't know that, right? I took the pain to understand that, to train myself in the culture that Japan is. And when I went to visit them, and it was like, wow, that there are so many similarities. But if I don't understand that, I cannot say I respect the women then, because I haven't embraced their culture. I'll be very superficial. So to me, yes, we as women need to uplift each other, be their voice if they cannot, and encourage them to be the voice.
And also to learn about other cultures, because you're so right. It's so important when you're obviously going across cultures to understand what people are currently doing, to understand what strengths you can bring from your own culture. What would you say is the main thing that you've kind of brought over from what you learned growing up?
One of the things growing up, from the stories that I just told you, that became my purpose in life, um, I feel what I bring is empathy. what I feel I bring is, I usually never teared up, but when I took the oath, I teared up. And that itself is like, I think, why did I tear up? Because, at the time, your mind is in, you're thinking from your heart. And I really strongly believe that today's leadership lacks empathy. We need to see whatever we do as leaders, what evidence we find, what data we do, what technology we bring forward, what innovations we do, however creative we are. We are humans at the end of the day. We need to meet all of that with empathy. We need to present that with empathy. So I think, to your question, Molly, the one thing I picked and I still is pretty much engraved in me and cannot be taken away, is empathy.
I think as well, quite a lot of people shy away from that. I know for me, I am in an all male team, and there have been moments where I've wanted to tear up, and I've really had to tell myself, oh no, you really need to hold yourself together, pull it back. Why do you think that is? Because empathy is such a strong, like you said, emotion, and it's so powerful. Why do you think we shy away from it?
Oh, that's a big question, and I think the answer is pretty simple, right? It is loaded, it is complex. But what I say is, that's because how we've been kind of brought up, and that's how, when we, our environment shapes us to be in. And I was in your place, and I am in your place, but my mindset has changed. And what I did is, with my mindset, my heart followed. So what you're saying is that because we are empathetic, sometimes empathetic to a fault, that we become self-critics. We start self-doubt. We start self-questioning. But when you bring that mind shift in yourself and turn that self doubt into asking better questions and confidence, and feed that confidence with facts, you will realize we are no different than them, and we are equal. The only thing that shies us from an all male to ask a question is, oh gosh, perhaps he's better than me. Perhaps it's male driven. It's those thoughts that come in, and we need to chip them out. We need to cut them out, and we are like, I'm no different. See, there was a podcast, I can't remember, that I heard, and they said about a study where they studied, applications for jobs that males would apply to, and applications that women would apply to. And apparently, men would apply to any jobs higher than what their education is, experience, expertise, without thinking twice. But we women will need to have all boxes checked, right? What I'm saying is that I am that way, I was that way, and I tend to be sometimes that way, but I am aware right now that that is not right. I tell myself, I cannot thrive in an environment where perfection is equal to performance. I cannot thrive. And I need to make them aware of that. I will thrive in an environment which is beyond silos, is collaborative, is inclusive, most importantly, has that psychological safety, right? I refuse to change for the mindset of the others, but I will stand up to explain to them to see my mindset.
Yeah. And was there an experience that kind of shifted that mindset for you?
Well, again, like I said, I was and I am sometimes in your place, right? The first thing is to be aware, right? The first thing is to be aware, and aware of, yeah, this is something I have grown up with, and this is not something that I'm gonna, it's not gonna go away as soon, but something I keep on working at, something in progress, something I accepted. Um, the other part of it is intention. You have to be intention about doing things in a way. So yes, you are aware. Yes, you are now intentionally setting up some boundaries. And lastly, so you are aware, your intent. These are the two pillars, but there's a third of the tripod. The third leg of the tripod for me, right? And that third leg of the tripod for me is failure. Is that failure is not, I'm not going to see that failure. So failure as a step down. I'm going to see that failure as a step up. I'm going to visualize my failures, not going back into self-doubt, not falling into that vicious circle. But what did I learn? So failure brings with it accountability, resilience, grit, and again that purpose, right? So in the center of it all, Molly, for me, what's my purpose, right? What is the passion driving my purpose? Am I aware of it? I'm intentional about it. And finally, do I fear failures, or do I am I happy with the failure? And to be honest, that's a difficult switch. It's difficult because when you're hurt, you will you will cry, you will feel the pain. You're not going to jump with joy, right? That it's not. That's where I tell people it's work in progress, because it's emotions. You cannot take away what is emotionally tuned in you as a kid and turn that into a joyous occasion. But if you're aware of it and tune yourself and your mindset says, let's reset, reflect, and pop up, take accountability and move on with zest, I think it will all come together.
So you mentioned that failure is the third pillar of this growth. How would you say that you've reframed that for yourself to be part of your growing journey?
Oh, there have been not one but many failures, right? And my whole career journey kind of, if you look from a pessimistic angle, which I'm not, one can say, oh wow, you failed at this. But the other way, you can look at me and say, oh wow, you turned this into an opportunity. So let me bring that to perspective and be the two sides, the yin and the yang, if I may use that. I started my medical clinical practice in India. I was doing great. I had a private clinic. I was with a private nursing home. I had a family, kids settled. Right, a curveball. My husband says, I have a project. I need to move to a different country. You are on board. I'm like, nope, I'm good. Let's stay here. We let go of those opportunities a few times. The opportunity comes again. This time my daughter is 4. And now I'm like, we've not seen the world. Let's do it. Like, let's just go with you, test the waters. We come to the United States. I couldn't do anything for a year. I couldn't even do the clinical practice I wanted. I had to learn the ropes. I had choices: either get back into medical school, get those finances. But I had a 4-year-old daughter at the time. And so if you look at it from the negative side, you're like, sham, your career is gone, you're a failure now, you can't do anything. And that's the story, to be honest, Molly, that I mentor many medics who come here, MDs who come here, and they give up because that's what they hear. They hear you can't get into medicine here, there's so many years of education, there's so much of education finances that you don't have. And I'm mentoring these kids to understand that there are opportunities. So if I stopped there and I took that failure and I kind of went back, I would probably just not be where I am today. So the way I took that failure and turned into an opportunity is, for months I did not give up. I looked at my resume, I looked up at people, I visited organizations like CRO. At the time I was thinking about being in a clinical research organization. I traveled states within the US by myself, and kind of interviewed and understood people. And again, like I said, to me, it wasn't the title. I decided, okay, I want to understand this. It's the purpose for me to understand. It's not what I want to make or what company I want to join. And I took the opportunity with Medtronic. Yes, it was a huge company, big name, big brand. Did I enter Medtronic as a MD? No, I entered in as a medical device reporting specialist. And to understand what's FDA and what's the regulations, what's compliance. And slowly I was even thinking of doing my master's at the time in in the regulatory field. So really reset, reflect, and start again, and not let failure bog you down, right? Fast forward to today, right? Today again, but it's been almost from 2011 to 2024, and I've achieved a lot. I've achieved, and I pat myself in the back. And there have been ups and downs. And everyone says, I felt like when I was in med safety, I needed to understand the business language. I could bring the patient's voice, but any projects kind of said, there isn't an ROI in there. And I'm like, how do I speak business language? And I found myself once again failing. I found myself once again, like you said, in this all male driven felt like everyone out there except me has this voice, and there are these few women in business who can speak that language, and I can't. And I looked up to them, but just looking up to women in business doesn't help. You need to have the skills. And so, again, reset, reflect on this. Is this a failure? Maybe personally I am, because I am that self critic, I am aware of it. But then what do I do? I turned the tables and decided I'm going to do my MBA, and that too at the age of mid 40s, right? And then I did apply for the physician executive MBA course at Haslam College of Business, and I graduate this December. So that's the commitment. Like,
Congratulations.
oh well,
Very
thank you.
impressive. Very impressive.
Thank you so
Oh.
much. Yes.
So, in your experience, what would you say confidence then looks like in terms of leadership?
Confidence. Confidence to me is quite conviction. To me, it is when you have the ability to lead people when things are packed, very clear, to lead, ability to lead people in a clear manner when things are uncertain and unclear. To me, confidence is going back to data. It is where evidence meets with empathy. And when you combine your conviction with evidence, with data, with facts, there is nothing that can stop you. There's no one that, no, not a single doubt you cannot clear. So that is what is confidence to me.
So, what would you say then is the hardest thing about driving change, especially in areas like medtech and pharma, where it's kind of balancing that innovation and the compliance?
So you see, balancing innovation and regulation is like walking on a tightrope. And forgive my analogy, but I don't know if you've seen, as growing up kids, I would always see these acrobats on the street in India dancing on a tightrope. Um, and you've probably seen that in circuses. But I don't know if you've seen, what I have seen is 2-year-olds walking on a tightrope. 2-year-olds walking on a tightrope and a wild bear performing a street dance right below them.
Yeah, I can't say I have seen that.
I've seen that. And at the time, I probably was one of those participants clapping at them. But today, I would tear it down. I would protest, right? But that's the tightrope you are walking on. And if you just think and say, I'm creative, I'm innovating, I'm creative, I'm innovating, but you do not take the human on the other side of it, um, you can't do that balancing act, right? But yes, it's a challenge, right? An engineer might come to me and show me the best innovation he has, and I might be straightforward and say, "Hey, listen, your baby is ugly. Take it away." Uh, and I can say that only if I have confidence. But importantly, it is a challenge, right? It is a challenge, but at the same time, it is rewarding. And the reward in it is when you transform compliance from a constraint into something that enables trust and innovation. Let's just say I told that engineer your baby is ugly. He might get haughty and angry, but you know what it starts? A laughter. It starts, hey, why did you say that? You need to build that trust with that engineer from a medical perspective and say, hey, listen, I've had many ugly babies. Let's turn it into a really pretty one, right? And let's think about the patients. Bring me in when you do your failure analysis, right? Bring me in when you do your human factor studies on your devices. Bring me in those clinical trials and those adverse events. Just don't gauge it from yourself. Okay, this is, it's just pain. It's not an adverse event, but pain in what context? So I think that's how you can change a challenge in today's technology and really be creative. We need it. We need it, but we need to change it into a reward.
So how do you turn that into a reward? How do you keep your teams motivated and essentially build that trust?
So when it comes to teamwork, right, it's important that when you have to, so to me, trust is not a single word. It's not a single training. It's not, hey, I taught you about the safety, this trust, blah, 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 sign off on it and move on. It is a journey. Trust is a journey. You have to work at it and work on it every time, every moment, every conversation. You cannot take it for granted. And as women, who knows that better than anyone? It is so important to build that trust. And so I say, as we work with teams and as we create a collaborative environment, we break silos, yes. But many times that has failed, Molly. Many times people have come back and said, well, we tried, we don't understand, and it just doesn't work. I can't get along with that person. And the thing is, it's not about trying to get along. It's about the purpose. Bring it back to the purpose. People don't do things intentionally. They did not intend for the device to cause the patient death. They did not intend when they did that drug out to cause these side effects that are deadly or fatal in the patients. That was not the intent. So let's assume positive intent. Let's assume there was a positive intent. Let's go in and say we have the same purpose. How do we work around it? Yes, COVID made it very difficult. Like people were working virtually, and building that trust became a challenge. But again, that challenge was amazing. Why? Because we got Zoom, we got virtual apps. I could talk to my parents in India faster than I could do before. WhatsApp, oh my goodness, I was on Skype. I don't know if you even remember the app called Skype.
Oh yeah, that was key for lockdown.
Again, challenges bring opportunities. All we need to do, Molly, is look at that silver lining. Look at, do we have that opportunity and bring that team together. So to me, again, trust is the journey. If I can infuse that in my team members, is trust in each other. Doesn't mean that you have to put on a smile and say yes. You don't have to be the yes woman. You don't have to be the negative or the devil's advocate. What you need to do is bring your true self and let them see it, whether it's virtually. When I see and I talk to you, even if on the phone, it is fine, because even the tone of your voice can help me calm, help me understand, help me trust you. But if that doesn't work for you, have a coffee chat, have a tea chat. If you're close by, meet up. I think people need to break that silos. It's that's gonna, that again brings intentional. Are you intentional about building that trust? And then it's a whole many paths open up.
Yeah, I think a good point that you made as well, always bringing it back to purpose. And it's almost reminding people of that shared purpose because you get so flustered, don't you? Especially, I know I work from home. So when you're doing all your communication through video calls or through emails, Skype, Teams, it can sometimes get a little bit confused, can't it?
Right, right. And I don't believe that people, for example, my younger daughter yesterday, she's like, Mom, don't you think you're controlling me too much? And I'm like, I just told you to stop watching. You spent 2 hours on the screen. You need to get back to
Yeah.
something. And that made me realize it's same with our teens. As we nurture our kids, there was a time, right, back again, this could be an Asian culture, where it's like you have to do this. It's discipline. And if not, you are punished. And that punishment could even be hitting you with a cane, or it was not a simple punishment. And so, but today we don't do that, and I would never do that to my kids. Instead, I would have an open discussion. Why do you think that is so? Why would you want more screen time? What's the good and the bad in it? We will encourage a discussion and we will take their viewpoints, no matter how small they are. I think the teams are the same. As leaders, we need to know that we cannot say, do this, don't do this, you can't work from home, you can work from home. I think when we are inclusive of our teams, when we know our team members, when we know what they are going through, and then come that change will be very easy. Change is a very difficult thing. We all know that we experienced it in COVID. Then why are we not being empathetic post COVID? Why are we enforcing certain things when we could bring it up in really wording it correctly, meeting it with empathy. Simple. There was a person who said, I like this boss. And I'm like, why? Why do you like working under this boss? She sends me handwritten notes. And it's not about just, like handwritten note. I can write a handwritten note. I'll send you a card, right? If you can only read my writing. But the the fact is not that he or she got the handwritten note. The fact is that that boss, that supervisor made the time to write the name, to send a greeting to that person, take the time, put a mail stamp, post it. That in a whole is a story. That is how change happens. That is how reform happens. Change is a evolution. We feared the word. I was surprised. Few years ago, we started talking about medical safety transformation. Few years later, people were fearing the word transformation and said, don't use the word transformation. People don't look at it correctly. Why is it so, Molly? Because we realize when you introduce a word, when you introduce a change, emotions happen. People look at it differently. People perceive things differently. So take a change to be an evolution wherever. Do not hesitate that. And therefore, I feel navigating and taking your team through that is really, if you invest your time in your team members, you are on the path of a successful team, of a successful project. You can see that clearly. But if you're going to just be superficial about it, if you just don't invest the time and be the leader who says you got to do it, you probably will get the ROI, but there would be challenges down the line.
So, along the same lines of change, I know technology is a hot topic at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, how would you see technology reshaping how we protect and serve clients?
So, in my 2 decades of working with pharma, with device and technology, I would land up speaking the language of data. And basically, if you ask this question to somebody else, even an MD, they may answer it differently. But to me, when I go back on what I've been doing thus far, to me, technology is actually turning data into direction, right? And how do I put that? So, for example, we've heard about AI. We've heard about real world evidence. We've heard about predictive analytics. All of these are very critical in helping us identify risks, in helping us identify not just risks, but identify them earlier on. And that's the word, earlier on, that will help us take actions proactively. And maybe futuristically, if I may say, personalized interventions, personalized innovations. And that's way future down the road, but AI is giving us that story. But again, it's not just having a smarter drug on the market or having a smarter machine on the market, right? It's about making a machine more human centric. Again, bringing that empathy that I'm focusing on right now is, if you get that, if you make it human centric because you are human, right? At the end of the day, what we are trying to do is just bridge the gap of the 3Ds that I say. You're bridging the gap of the 3Ds. And what are those 3Ds? So the first is the device or the drug, whatever you are. So devices or the drug, the data, because that's where I've been working on. And lastly, dignity. Once you bridge these gaps, bring these 3Ds together, I do think whatever you do, innovation in technology and services, you will be reshaping. You will be reshaping and protecting and servicing the patients. That's your purpose, servicing the patients at the end of the day, right?
Yeah. And what does the dignity refer to? How does that bridge the data and the device or drug?
So, like I said previously as well, an engineer comes in and he's happy with this product and he's fine with it. And but what happens in you're wearing these rose-colored glasses, you're seeing it from your perspective. And you're innovating things, and you're creative. I give it to you. You're creative and you're ensuring. that creativity, that technology is affecting, is giving to people who require it, and that's perfect. But what about ethics? What about quality standards? Have you tested that? What about your trials in different colored skins, right? In different countries, in different atmospheres, in different environments. So you cannot compromise on these, right? You need to, at every step, bring back again that dignity, that integrity, that honesty. And for these things to happen, your biggest friends, your strongest friends are ethics and quality.
Yeah, I like that. 3Ds. I'll keep that in mind. So, you've said that you've worked for big companies, so Philips, Medtronic. How would you say these have taught you about transformation at scale?
So large organizations, I've worked for both large and smaller, and I kind of do run startup companies as well, and I don't want to kind of put them in buckets here. I worked with Intuitive and the robotic company, and it really opened up my eyes to like, oh wow, there's a robot. I was like a child in a candy shop when I saw the Da Vinci, and I just couldn't stop. So larger organizations have again taught me about the challenge and the rewards. And like I said earlier, there have been so much of a journey, a transformation of things. They've taught me that transformation requires a mindset, and that's where I say, you can come from your heart, you can come with a purpose, but if you can't have people see what you are, your purpose is, or where you're coming from, if you aren't able to make them see or change their mindset, Molly, then it probably will. You'll have to start thinking of newer ways. Just like you said, in an all male driven, and you are right there, what you're trying to do is not getting their buy in. I wouldn't go like, okay, you need to say, what you're trying to do is get them to see and sit and have a good discussion, get them to see your perspective, get them to change their mindset. And these large organizations, especially Medtronic, because I've been worked with Medtronic in the patient safety. I mean, with Medtronic 10 years, but with patient safety or med safety about 6 years, I want to say. And really, that journey was amazing. From going from a data perspective and evidence gathering to really getting all medical minded people together, build a story, and talk to cross functional partners and make it a shared service was an amazing transformation. Same thing with Philips, right? If they do have medical safety, they're working hard in getting that and amplifying that. But most importantly, at the end of the day, it is not just what you do, but it is again why you do it. And if that purpose is in their mission statement, is in everything they do, is in their mindset, I think it drives. And I see that happening even in startup or mid startup companies. I'm working with Capel right now, and it's amazing how we can, with these experiences, come into an organization, whether big or small, and start building that culture, start changing that mindset. So uh, it was a long answer to a short question, but the bottom line here is to have to be taught or change or have that transformation at scale is, let's target the mindset. I would say it's the mind shift.
And what does it mean for you to now be a voice for patient safety?
Oh, it feels amazing. It feels amazing, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud to say that I have that voice. I can speak. I have that experience and that expertise that backs it up. So yes, if Molly reaches out to me and say, "Can you talk about patient safety? Can you bring that voice to the table?" And I'm happy about it. Uh, back 10 years back, I wouldn't, right? And so basically, it's the experience, the expertise, having worked with people, having worked with MDs, with engineers, with medical writers, with complaint handling group, and collaborating with them, um, kind of makes you feel empowered, right? But I feel one of the things that I think, in order to be that voice, I think uh, I introduce the 3Ds to you. I'll introduce another alphabet, and those are the 3 Cs. For me, For me to be the voice and feel proud about the voice of the patient, I am intentionally every time looking at these three C's, and that is candor, curiosity, and compliance. So I encourage that in my team, the three C's, and that gets you where you are. That can get you to your purpose. That can get to your collaboration, and that can make and strengthen your voice.
That's a really good point. Has there ever been a time where you have struggled to maintain that throughout your team?
Oh, absolutely, Molly. Not just one time, but many, many times, right? And things happen. Like I said, going back to investing yourself in a team. If you have a team, it's a house. It's like, let me take it back. It's not a house of brick walls. It is a house you need to convert into a home. And what I mean by that is it's not made of people like size. It's different. So yes, do I struggle getting everyone to see the same? Yes. But how can you kind of overcome that challenge? Truly, it's like really being transparent, really being vulnerable, really going out there and reaching out. It's whether it's a virtual world. I think success in a virtual world to overcome such a challenge, Molly, for me was reaching out. Hey, I'd love a coffee chat with you. How are you feeling about that? Do you have the time? Sometimes it's like, oh, I don't have the time. Can we do something else? Again, don't get disheartened if you get a negative response. Assume positive intent. That person must really be busy, right? Reach out a second time. Are there any other ways? But when I say about challenges and struggles with the team in the virtual environment, those have been the challenges, right? People have been busy, they're working 16 hours because now they can work 16 hours, and they're giving and they're getting burnout at the end of the day. So you have to bring that understanding to a conversation, and going back to understanding where the team is coming from. For example, I had this one team member, every conversation, every one-on-one went in kind of a monosyllable. How are you doing? Good. How is everything fine? And didn't come out much. And I'm like, there is something wrong. I couldn't connect with the person on a personal level to have, and that's fine. Not everyone is ready to tell their deep sorrows to you on your first one-on-ones or the first few one-on-ones. They need to trust you. That's why I say trust is a journey, right? And then slowly and steadily, when that person starts opening up, you realize he has or she has that potential. But what you need to is make that person come your way. It's a two-way street. When they start trusting you, when you are able to build that trust, so don't give up. Don't give up easily. Keep going for it, and bring and I feel you will be able to turn that into an opportunity. But it doesn't mean you have to keep working at it till the end, right? There has to be that you don't want to get burned out. And sometimes people just need space, move on. And that's part of being self-aware, I believe, and another whole conversation that can go down emotional intelligence. But again, being self-aware is also a very highly important thing. Sometimes we say, oh, let's have coffee chat, oh, let's have this, and then when you just kind of miss that self-awareness. So it's important that you even build and nurture self-awareness while you kind of make these teams or approach teams for team building.
And you mentioned burnout there a few times as well. How would you kind of suggest to your team, or even personally, to balance that burnout with kind of pushing yourself?
Oh, I've been a victim, I want to say, of burnout, and I don't think I've told this story to you earlier or anyone else. But like I said, I am one of the person to say that I self doubt, I'm a huge self critic, but at the same time, I am highly aware and intentional, and that didn't happen in a day, right? It happened when I really kind of went under the knife. So a few years ago, back in 2019, I had a back surgery, and that's when I realized I am really pushing myself, working 80 hours a week. And it's not that someone is asking me to work, it's just my passion of sitting in this chair for long hours. I like to do it and I forget about everything else. And slowly it starts creeping on you. And that's when I realized, and I became super aware and super intentional about how I avoid burnout. Burnout can be different for different people. You need to understand my burnout may not be your burnout, but I need to understand my burnout. And what's that burnout? And again, I come back to be intentional. Find that burnout, find that limit, find that threshold. You cannot work as you're aging. You cannot work as you're learning. You cannot work if your lifestyle is just sitting in a place to a certain level, right? So figure out that threshold, figure out that wall. Someone once told me there is a wall of burnout. If you find that wall and you stop yourself at that wall, you'll not be burnout. And I'm like, how do we get to that wall? And no one can help you get to the wall except yourself, right? And therefore be very intentional. First thing, start saying no. Learn to say no. Learn to say no in a way that the other person can understand that no. An example, Molly. I used to work virtually, like I said. I did a lot of my time working virtually, and I had like 10 emails to respond, and someone would send me something, and I would say done. And that done to that person was like, oh gosh, did she not like what I asked? And that was just done. Is she just wrote done? Is she not approachable? Um, and then because I was doing so much so fast, I was not investing in the people. At the end of the day, I felt like I did so much, but I didn't get anything back, and I got burned out. But I'm not don't feel rewarded.
Spreading yourself too thin.
In fact, you have to go back and say, writing a few words and say, sorry, I cannot do this right now, but I can certainly understand you need it. If you give me this time, I'll work on it. I started being an organizer, Molly. And this was like 6, 8 years ago. I used to run away from Excel sheets. You can ask my husband about that. He would open an Excel and I would look at go out the door. I'm like, I'm not sitting here to do an Excel with you. But guess what? I did. I took an advanced course. I did some macros. I did things and started organizing things with my Excel. I love it right now. In fact, I got a book said Queen of Excel, and I'm like, I'm not that far. I'm not that ahead. But I guess people like to, my name's Queenita, so people kind of take it from there. Um, so, so organizing, yes. But I was just telling my elder daughter the other day that there are two things that will really make you feel rewarding. Organizing didn't make me feel a lot rewarding, Molly. To be honest, I could see the nice folders, I put things in it, but didn't help burnout. What helped burnout when I switched from one to the other? And the biggest thing that I switched from was instead of doing multitasking, where I said, right, I have 10 emails, 10 screens, I do have 3 screens here, move things out, is I switched from being a multitasker to a multiplier. And I did that with intentions, with talking to people and telling them in all transparency, this is what I'm right now. Can you work with me? And they made it work. And like I said, if you don't ask, you'll never know. So simple. Like if I needed to get, like I'm getting burned out. Why? My health. I'm just sitting here and taking meetings after meetings. And I'm just sitting here, but I don't go out for a walk. I can't fit that in there. I'm not getting my liquid in because I don't keep it here. I just suggested to my team members, hey, listen, I have your one-on-ones with me and I want to be that. I'm going to invest in you. But I can't do that sitting in front of a screen unless you want to share or show me something. Can we start walking? You can walk, I can walk. Can we see a time where both of us can get a little exercise in, a little bit of drinking, and just make this a virtual coffee walk for our one-on-ones? And that made a whole lot of difference. I did 3 things. I got my liquids in, I got my walk in, and I could talk in a casual tone versus a very formal tone on a screen, just checking on tasks. I could ask them about the weather. Hey, I'm walking. What's the weather like there? And we could start a conversation. There were icebreakers. And I saw that, even a 15 to 30-minute conversation was so, it was rewarding. It really was very fruitful. So yes, that's how I changed. This would be the first tip if you are a new person. If you've done organizing like me and it doesn't work, try switching and finding ways to be a multiplier. Again, this was a lovely podcast that I heard, and I felt like, okay, this one is easy to apply, and it's really easy to apply. All you need to go is go to the calendar and start changing those things. And um, Little steps at a time.
I was going to say this is actually such a refreshing thing to hear because I personally hate multitasking. And even when you were saying things about if you haven't had your water intake for the day or if you haven't had a bit of exercise, which working from home sometimes is going to be something on your mind. And I know if it gets to 12 o'clock and I haven't had my required water intake, I'm in a flap. So that is such a good point. And I think that's a really good point with the multitasking and doing the multiplying instead. Because I know I find that I'm so much more productive when I can put all my time and effort into one thing, tick that off, move on to the next thing, tick that off, rather than having 10 screens on. My mind is all over the place.
Right, right.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to move on to my last question
You
now.
are. This is such a
And that
nice
is
pleasure in talking. I would rather it just never end, but yes, please go ahead.
I've loved this conversation. But my last question is if someone watching this had to remember one thing, what would you want that one thing to be?
Okay, so this is the thing that I tell my kids. I tell my mentees, my mentor, just be yourself. When you are in that space, be it self-doubt, be it a struggle, be it a failure, be whatever, when you are in that zone that pushes you to your limits, that makes you feel small, when you are in that zone, just go back to yourself and say, who am I? Why am I? Who am I? Why am I? And keep telling yourself it's going to get better, everything gets better, but keep telling yourself this is my purpose and passion. And if you lose that purpose, if you lose that passion, go find it. Drop everything. And I tell this to my 19-year-old who is now pursuing medicine herself. I tell her there may be a time when you want to give up everything. Go back to the purpose. If you are not aware of why you want to pursue medicine, there is no fun in pursuing medicine. Going back right to my story, if I just wanted a checkbox to make my dad proud and here you've turned a daughter into a son, I don't think he would have been, because if I was sad at the end of the day and didn't do what I liked, he wouldn't have been happy. But what I found is the purpose and the passion to do medicine, and till date, that's the purpose and the passion. And so if that's your purpose, find that, go to that. If you find your purpose is wavering, go strengthen it. Take a break, take a step back. That investment, that step back is going to go a long way. So that's kind of where I want to leave the audience with that thought.
Follow that passion, follow that purpose. I think that's a great message to leave everyone with. So, Kunita, it's been so lovely talking to you,
Yeah.
and thank you so much for all your insights.
Thanks, Molly. It's always been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to this, and I'm wishing you all the success. Again, great initiative. Keep it up, and I look forward to listening everybody else you get on the show.